Hey everybody, this is Tasha with Prep For It, and you know my co-host Miss Mouse Toes down there, the hostess with the mostest, and then we have our special guest Backwoods Law over here, Bruce. His channel is pinned. His channel link is pinned at the top of my page, or at the top of the live stream link, so you can just click on that and get him subbed up if you haven't subbed up yet.
I did it.
It
was my fault.
You did it.
Sorry. Forgot I had that on. Like a rookie.
Like a rookie. And we'll wait a couple minutes because, my goodness, the notifications has been ridiculous.
I've been having the same issue.
You know what makes me mental? The community page, when you share something out, it shows up way at the bottom on your subscriber thing. What is the point of it? I always put something on there, but it makes me crazy. I have to put a video and say, please go to my community page, like when I'm asking a question, and then I'll get epic responses. But other than that, nobody sees them.
Yeah.
Part of the reason for that is YouTube's trying to get more people to do lives. That's why they're kind of centering everything around all this live stuff, because they're trying to compete with Twitch. Because Twitch is almost entirely all lives. So YouTube's trying to compete with them and try and bring YouTube over to that type of programming, rather than everybody doing videos, do lives.
Wow.
Oh, hey Suburban, hey CR, and of course Mouse and Bruce, and Josh was out there a while ago, and Hugo Homestead, Miss CB. So thank y'all for coming. We're just kind of chatting for a minute until we get started to allow some more people to get over here. Thank y'all for your patience. Hey, Arc Wild Man, good to see you. Yeah, I tell you, it's something. The notification things, that's how they are. That's why we just been chit-chatting. You haven't missed anything.
That's why reminders are so good. Like when Southern Ohio Prepper or Gil puts them up, I put it I set an alarm on my phone, because otherwise I won't remember Friday at 9, but I'll have, 8:55 and there's an alarm, and then I'll go and, like CR said, refresh my notification, be okay, that's where I was going. Yep. But yeah, they took away Hangouts, which was so groovy and so easy to use for everybody. And now they're back on, we want to do lives, but you literally don't make any money at lives, right? Unless you have people give you donations. And I just have AdSense. Yeah. And it's very irritating.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody for your patience, for allowing me a couple of weeks off. I needed it because I had a pretty major dental thing and big chunk of bone that had to be fused back in and all kinds of stuff. So I appreciate y'all, your prayers and your patience, and allowing me to have a couple of weeks of a break. And I'm going camping with Gardener Josh and his wife Leah and some of their family, and Trish and Dudley and their grandkids, and Sandra and her husband Marty. So we're excited. And my granddaughter Chelsea's coming with me, so she's here.
Cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So we're heading out tomorrow, and so yeah, that's why I look like this, because we've been out cleaning out the vehicle, making sure there's places for the grill and all of that. Well, we'll get started, and those that end up showing up, show up. But okay, so Bruce, first of all, would you just please tell everybody a little bit about your background, all of it, including your fire safety, your fire credentials?
A lot of the people that are over here I recognize, so a lot of them probably know it, so I'm not going to go like stupid in depth.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be in great detail, just kind of a overview.
Started out of high school, went into the Army, did that for 12 years. I was a military policeman there, so that's where the law enforcement, that type of knowledge comes from, is that. Got out, I was working in private security, doing executive protection, things like that. I also worked in the hospitality industry as a security director, things like that. And eventually, Purple T-Bear caught my eye and forced me to move to Pennsylvania. So when that happened, I got over there and I was like, what am I going to do here? And they had a volunteer fire department in the little town we lived in. So I said, well, I should be able to learn how to do that. I went down there and they said, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, be a firefighter, I guess. I don't know. What's a firefighter do? I'd never done it before. So I ended up going to the fire school. We had to do that for, God, what was it? Like 20 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And we went and we learned all that stuff and learned how to go inside on fires and not burn ourselves up. And then once we graduated those classes, as a little incentive for the volunteer firefighters, they would give all the new graduates brand new fire gear. So all the bunker gear, the helmets, everything, the boots would be brand new and yours personally, so that you weren't wearing somebody else's gear that had worn it 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's where the fire service came in, and because of that, I actually got into the medical side of things as well. When I was in the Army, I did combat lifesaver, but that was just like, a temporary title thing that they add on to you.
Right.
And that was because I was doing traffic accident investigations at that time. So if I was heading to a traffic accident and the ambulance hadn't got there yet, at least they knew somebody could render aid immediately before the medics or whoever, whatever country you were in, got there and were able to help. Actually, and that's why when they asked me if I would be a member on the rescue truck, where you actually go out on all the medical calls and all that stuff, they said, if you want to, we will pay for you to go get your EMT training. So,
wow.
Okay, I'll do that.
Wow.
Yeah, they fully paid for everything. Went and did that. That was a 24-week course. And then we had to do hands-on practical at the end, show them we knew what to do physically. And then we had to take a test to show that we had it in our head. And then at that time, we weren't required to, but I actually went on to the next step, which was to get my National Registry Emt certification, which is you have to take a test on a computer, and it's like 150, 200 question test, and you only have like an hour and a half to do it. Go through that, and you get done, you leave, and then like a month later, they'll tell you if you passed or not.
Oh, wow.
I actually passed, so I was like, okay, cool. So I had my National Registry EMT, which, especially in the western part of Pennsylvania where I was, unless you were a paramedic, almost none of the EMTs did that until they made it a requirement. So I had it like a year and a half, 2 years before state of Pennsylvania made it a certification requirement to take the actual National Registry test. So, and I also did that for my firefighter. When I graduated from fire school, I took the Firefighter 1 National Registry test as well, so that I was nationally certified. It just helps, if
Yes.
you're doing something, it helps that people know that you've been trained, tested, and know how to do what you're doing.
Right.
So that's kind of where it went. And then the last 5 years I was working, I actually worked as a emergency manager for my borough, which is smaller than a city. We only had like 400 houses in our little borough, but it's an actual political subdivision. So we had a town council and we had a mayor, all that stuff. And so they were required by Pennsylvania law to have an emergency manager. And they didn't have one for like 10 years. And then finally somebody said, hey, this guy over here knows about law enforcement, knows about firefighting, knows about EMS. So I got volunteered for that. And I said, you know what? Don't have to run into buildings anymore. Don't have to worry about somebody running into me when I'm driving the fire truck and they're not paying attention. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. So I went over there because the police chief actually was pushing hard for me to get in there, because he was having to do chief of police as well as the EMS coordinator and everything else. So he pushed real hard. So I got into that. And that's where I got a lot of the information that, especially in the preparedness community, everybody's like, how the hell did you get training from FEMA on this? Or how did you get that? Because I got voluntold to do something, so I did it.
Voluntold, huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we called it in the Army.
The voluntold.
Sergeant would say, hey, you're voluntold.
I love that. I love that phrase.
That's a cool evolution, though, because I like that. Of whatever the next step is, take that next step, and they paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be crazy not to get it. You know what I mean? If it's going to be paid for. Hey, OC, good to see you.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what I did. Because, of course, I didn't know anything about being a firefighter before I started it. I had no idea. I had worked law enforcement in the military, and I'd done all kinds of stuff there, and I'd watched them work before. I'd watched them come to car wrecks and cut people out of cars, but I didn't know how to do it. So
Yeah.
when they started asking me, hey, will you go get your EMT? Will you go to vehicle rescue technician class? Will you go to elevator rescue class? I just said, yeah. You're
Yeah.
paying for it, I'll go.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like one of those people. If you're volunteering to give me information, I want to absorb it the best I can. I'm not perfect. I don't retain every bit of it, but I'm going to do my best to try to soak up as much as I can.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so tell them just real fast a little bit about what type of things you put out on your channel, just so they kind of know, in case there's somebody out here that watches later that isn't sub to your channel.
Okay, typically what I put out is I try to put out stuff for preparedness. So if there's a way to plan that makes it easier for you or helps you identify things, that's one of the ones that I've done. I also do some lives. I'll do lives. Typically, I've been doing them on Friday to cover for Dave because he's not doing Fridays. And those I try to do as an open chat. Just come in. That way, if somebody has a question from a video I did or something that they ran into in their life, they can just say, hey, what about this? And then we all go after it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is. It's a preparedness channel, but it's not strictly just a preparedness channel. I mean,
Right.
if there's something fire safety you want to know, if there's something, law enforcement related you want to know, I've had experience
Right.
in all of those professions and been certified in all of them, so I at least can
Awesome.
give you a little idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys haven't subbed to his channel, you need to sub, you need to click the bell, and you need to check it out. I'm sorry to those that have been having lives lately and I haven't been there. These storm systems coming through have ramped up my headaches like crazy because I have a permanent headache, but then I get these pressure headaches that like sort of like migraines that it triggers, that intensifies the headache I have basically. So, and then we had storms yesterday, so I couldn't be distracted at all. I had to keep my eyes on the radars and stuff because I have family all over the state. So I had to keep my eyes on all of that. So I do apologize. I know it sounds like I'm just making excuses, y'all, but I promise you I'm not. I love you, and I enjoy all the lives that I go to. So, okay. So Bruce, where do you, let's start at the beginning. Some basic things for home fire safety. What are some things, some tips or tricks or some things that you think that we should know?
Okay, I'm going to put up a share a screen thing here.
Okay.
It'll just take me a second to pull it up here.
Okay.
Doo-doo-doo. And of course, it's giving me hell because I'm on my VPN, so let's try it this way.
Of course.
I learned
And
you
of
have to
course
be on
it's not gonna
Google
let it do
Chrome
it.
too. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it won't let me do it. So
Uh-oh.
It's happened
and
to us.
it's because
3,
I'm on
4
VPN.
times.
So that's sometimes it's funky with YouTube. They'll
Yeah, I
just
know.
do that. So that's all right. We'll go from here.
Yeah.
What I was going to put up was a little screenshot of what the National Fire Service has put out, and I will go ahead and open it up here on mine so that I don't lie to you and say the wrong thing because it changes all the time. So
Yes.
this is the most recent one was from 2015. So that's what I want to make sure that I'm giving you. And
Okay.
it's the top 7 causes of house fires. And
Okay.
I'll open it up so that I can actually read it because I'm an old man now.
I hear you.
Okay, so of all of the fires that occurred in the United States up until 2019 is when this is from. Okay, so close, 2 years old. The top causes of house fires were cooking or in the kitchen. 40% of all the fires were related to that. 18% of all fires that occurred up until 2018 were related to heating. 17% were electrical related, so bare wires, something wrong in the fuse box or the breaker box, something like that. 3% were related to candles. 15% were related to arson. 5% were related to smoking in the home. And then there's a part called other, which is 2%. And what falls into the other category is something that in the fire service we call exposures. And somebody's probably sitting there going, exposure? What do you have to worry about whether you have clothes on or not for a fire? No, different exposure. Exposure is when you have a building that's burning and you have buildings on, let's say, 3 sides of it. they all have at least one of the sides of their structures that is exposed.
Yes.
So when you're fighting a fire in a house, you have to take into account those exposures, because if you don't, the fire in the house that is burning can actually spread to those houses very easily. And then instead of one house, now you've got 2, 3, 4 houses on fire if you're not thinking about what you're doing and covering that exposure. And 2% of the fires are related to that they get a crew there and they maybe don't have enough people to do everything. So initially they just go in because somebody said there was somebody in the house. So they go in to try and save a life. Meanwhile, the fire spreads to the second house because they were trying to do a life critical thing and didn't happen right. So that's where that comes from. Very basically, when you go into those types of situations, just look at where you're going and what you're doing. I mean, 40% of fires happen in the kitchen, so
that's going to be one of your main culprits right there, is just safety in the kitchen. Yeah.
Everybody typically thinks that electric is like the lead main thing for fires and everywhere, all around the world. It's not, because the electrical people, the people that are the brotherhood of electrical workers, they don't want your house to burn down. They're not purposely doing something false or bad. But Joe Blow down the street, who says he knows how to work on electrical things, comes in, changes a switch out for you, or changes an electrical plug out for you, and he cross wires it or reverse wires it, and you don't know any better because you're not an electrician. And eventually it leads to an issue. And that's what we found in a lot of house fires is that were electrical related. It was because somebody that was unlicensed and uncertified came in and changed a outlet or a switch.
Yeah.
So,
and then for like really old houses, mice can get in there and chew on the wires and things like that and expose them. And, hey, Ginger.
Yeah, because they'll have a tar and paper is what it was called. And we're talking houses that are like older than 1956, 57-ish. They were using just tar on top of bare wires and wrapping it in paper. And if you look at it, a lot of times it's newspapers from back then. They wrapped it in. Yeah. I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a lot of times that'll happen. And the mice are really good at eating at those. And that's what'll cause your shorts. Because they loved getting that paper for their nests. And of course, mice and rats are immune to everything in the world. Oh, yeah. So they can eat tar and they don't give a damn. It doesn't do anything to them. So that's where a lot of issues, and that happened in Pennsylvania a lot too, because there's a lot of older homes. Yeah.
I know my father-in-law and his wife, my husband's stepmom, they had a fire, completely lost their home, and it was because they had too many, where you have the multi-plug thing that plugs into the wall, and they had every one of those loaded up with stuff, and it was just too much, and it caused a fire in their home, and it was a total loss.
Yep.
That house
and those
went up
multi-plugs,
so
fast. And they sell them at Lowe's everywhere. They sell them to you.
Yes.
But they assume that people have enough general knowledge that they know, okay, if you're going to put 6 things into the same plug and there's only 2 plugs in there and that little plate goes on top of it so that you can do it, you can't do that with things that are going to be running 100% of the time. So if you have a heater in it, you have an air conditioner in it, something like that, that's no-go. You need to have that directly plugged into the wall, because you can't have 6 air conditioners running off the same plug. It's going to be drawing too many amps. And people don't realize that, and they just plug it in, and they plug everything into it, and they think, I'm fine, we're good, now I don't have to buy, have an electrician come in and put 6 more plugs in for me. Well, you really do, because when your house goes up and burns down, that's a lot more expensive than having an electrician come in and put a couple extra plugs in for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. And there's things that you can't replace, memorabilia that you can't replace, and lives that you can't replace. Yes. So that's the main thing there if somebody doesn't go out. So is there anything else on that portion that you wanted to share?
If anybody has any questions about something, I just kind of gave you a broad overview of what the general causes were. And of course, one of the major general causes is the kitchen. So if you just think before you do something in the kitchen, and one of the best things, and a lot of people get it wrong, when they're thinking about a fire in the kitchen, they think about a grease fire. For some reason, everybody thinks to throw flour on a grease fire rather than throwing baking soda on a grease fire. You throw flour on it, and it's going to ignite in front of you, probably burn your eyebrows off, probably singe your hair a little, and you're going to go, oh my God, what was that? As all the stuff behind the actual stove catches on fire, and now it's climbing up the wall, and you're like, what happened? I've always heard to throw flour on it. No, not flour. Baking soda.
And they sell the large packets of it, like the big large packets of it in the laundry section and sometimes in the cleaning section. So you can get the bigger packets and then just keep it handy when you're cooking. Keep it right there. How close should you have a fire extinguisher, like to where you think most likely the fire is going to be at the stove? So how close should you have a fire extinguisher, and what type of fire extinguisher should you have for the kitchen?
Okay, typically, and there is a new type of fire extinguisher out there now. It was called a K fire extinguisher, which is one that in the past hasn't really been talked about in a lot of home safety stuff. But a K fire extinguisher, what it is it uses this stuff that they created in the Navy to deal with fires that were in an actual engineering compartment in a ship, because those are very difficult to deal with. So they created what's called purple K powder, and this is actually called purple X powder. But it's the same exact thing. What it does is if you have one of those K powder extinguishers, if you have a grease fire, you spray it on there, it completely blankets everything. It's a hell of a job to clean it up, but your house doesn't burn down. Because it completely blankets it. And when we're talking about a fire, you have a triad. You have oxygen, heat, and then a fuel source. So if you can take any one of those three legs out, the fire can't sustain itself. So that's why the purple K powder works so well, because it takes the oxygen away and it stops immediately. I would have that at least within arm's reach, or so that you only have to take like one side step or one step away from the oven, stove, wherever you are, to grab it off of the wall. And they make them in little small extinguishers. I think actually you have one, don't you, Mouse Toast?
Yeah, I got this little Tundra.
Yeah, it's about that size right there, and it has a little like trigger on it on the top, and it looks kind of like a pistol almost. And you just poof, you hit it, and boom, goes right on to where you want it, and just spray back and forth like you would if you were trying to like paint. And you're painting something horizontally. Do it like that, and do it with the fire extinguisher, because then you're going to cover the entire area instead of putting it all in one area and then splashing the oil out and creating a fire even bigger than it was.
See, now you nailed it with that, because kitchen fires are the scariest, and the back of each one of these tells you what it's for. Grease. We have one by our solar system, because it's inside in a closet with batteries. And so we asked when we built it from our solar company, what exactly do we need? We know how to shut it off and just shut the batteries down, right? That's easy. But how do you stop those? So what they recommended, we wrote down and brought several of those extinguishers. And just what you were talking about, grease. I always say it in my canning videos. Do not walk away from your canner. First, your pressure can get too high, and then your canner goes kapoof. It doesn't explode anymore. But now you got to pay $139 for a new canner if you can find one. I'm Southern, so I fry a whole bunch of things. But I got the Presto Fry Daddy, the good one that you plug in with 2 racks, real safe. Because we fry shrimp, we might do hush puppies, we do it, and I don't want to do it on the stove. When I even pan fry, like breaded steaks, cube steaks, things like that, I have not one fry skillet, not one cast iron that does not have a lid that I can slide over it.
And smother it,
Thank you. And in the name of God, do not keep your baking soda over your stove in that cabinet. When the flames are up, how exactly are you going to get it?
Or the fire extinguisher, same thing. You don't want it up over where the fire could be climbing.
Exactly. And think about it. Your hood is going to start to melt, isn't it, Bruce, from the heat? Because what is it? I mean, it's going to start drip down like
it's aluminum. And what you have to consider with a fire is, there's a fire going, and down at the bottom, it's like that orangish, yellowish. When you see a fire that has that orange yellow on it, that right there is about 700 to 800 degrees with that color.
Wow.
However, as the flame climbs up, it continues to grow in heat because it's still being fed from the bottom. It has a heat plume that's going up with it. So that smoke that's rolling up, that smoke that gets up to your ceiling can be at 2,000 to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's why you hear about, firefighters being so worried about having a flashover.
Yeah.
Because, they got to deal with the fire here, but up above your head is the smoke. And you could have 2 to 3 feet of smoke in a house above you that's just waiting to get to that perfect temperature, and then it flashes over immediately, and everybody there gets, whew. You're like, wow, what was that? If you're lucky, that's all that happens.
Yeah.
Because we would have to go and practice that in these metal containers that are like shipping containers, and they specifically set these fires up so that they would backdraft on us, so that they would flash over on us, so that you can experience it, so that when you're in a fire and it actually happens, it's not the first time you've experienced it, and you get to realize, hey, wait a second, we've got like 3 feet of smoke up here. This is bad news. We better get out of here. And that's when you see in a lot of these shows that do firefighting, you'll see them stabbing the fire with hose. They'll start turning up and hitting all the smoke. That's called penciling the smoke. And what you're doing is you're trying to cool it down just enough so that you can back out of there before the whole room explodes.
Okay.
That's interesting. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Backwoods on specifically grease fires.
Yep.
Okay, some no's are putting water on it, correct? That's just going to cause it to spread. So the proper use of your fire extinguisher for grease fires, is it the same with other fires? Like you point it to the base and sweep back and forth?
Yes.
Okay. And we need to not just the adults know this, but the kids need to know this. How to
and that's
use
why
these.
we would go to schools and do it, because that's one of the main important things when we would go to the elementary schools, because we would be with like anywhere from 8 to 12-year-olds. So this is a child that can understand what you're saying, can ask questions to make sure they understand, but that may be the person that's home after school and they're 9, 10 years old. Most people nowadays will let a kid like that back home, and they're not sending them to a daycare. It's just the way it goes because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
But if they understand that, okay, I screwed up when I was making my Cheerios or Oreos or whatever they're doing, and they screwed up and somehow got a fire, at least they know I can go grab the fire extinguisher. It's in the kitchen.
Right.
And this is how I operate it. I pull the pin, I squeeze the thing, and I go back and forth on it. And if they can do just that, they can prevent the fire from spreading. Yeah, they're probably still going to get their butt beat, but
yes.
At least it's not for having the house burned down.
Yeah. And if they can't quickly get that fire under control with their fire extinguisher, the option is just to get out and call for help, correct?
Yep. Get out of the house. Do not worry about calling. Get out of the house first, and when you go out, close the door behind you. Most people forget that part, because when you get out of the house, you're trying to get out of there as fast as you can. You leave the door open. The problem with leaving the door open is now you've given a massive air source to the fire, which allows it to grow even bigger.
Yeah.
When you get out, if you close that door, the fire is still going to be burning, but it's going to be burning where it was when you left it, because it's not getting supplied with extra air. Because once it gets that extra air, then it's looking for more fuel, and it starts spreading out. And then by the time the fire department gets there, even if it's 2 or 3 minutes after you call, the entire kitchen's involved in that point.
Yeah.
And then you got a big, huge fire, and we got to start cutting stuff. We got to start cutting the roof, and we got to put people inside of a building now that's burning, which is never safe, but we make it as safe as we can. In order to go in there, because a lot of people don't think about it, but let's say there's a fire in the kitchen, and the stove burns down to the point where now you're going to have natural gas feeding the fire instead of just oil or grease or wallpaper or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's even worse, because then we got to do different things as firefighters to control a natural gas fire instead of just a fire on the stove.
Right.
And you have to know they have natural gas. Like I'm on propane. My tank is at the back of my house.
Yep.
That was the thing at a friend's house with an electric stove. My stove has the knobs on the front because we moved here and we're on a well. Okay. They're bringing little tanker trucks. Here's the bottom line. When your house catches on fire in the well, it's burning down. Okay. So the one place I know it could start was the kitchen. So I wanted my controls on the front. I've got propane. So I went to his friend's house, who I said, your heat is really too hot. But don't tell me how to cook. I've been cooking a long time. Poof. She didn't have a lid for it. I could not reach over that pot to turn it off.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I yelled to her husband, "Where is your breaker box?" And he's just standing there. So I shake him and he points. I go throw the breaker to the stove. That's all I knew to do. And
Yeah.
guess who was the first younger woman out of that house? Me. I didn't give
Yeah.
two fat figs if they burned down.
Yeah.
I told her it's too hot. She didn't have a thermometer. I was like, that's getting a little scary. Oh, you're not in charge here. Well, I'm not in charge anywhere, but I still don't want to catch my hair on fire here.
Exactly.
And I said, when I get my next stove, is going to have those controls at the front.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Mouse. That's a very good point. Because it's not just about reaching up over into a cabinet above. It's
Right.
about turning off the controls on that. Because I'm the same as you. I have a propane. So, yeah, that's a great point.
The other thing that's very important, if you do have propane and you're not on a natural gas line, make sure you let the firefighters that get there know that, because that's very important for them to know. Because if the fire starts spreading back toward where that tank is, then you have a much bigger problem. It's called a bloody explosion.
Yeah.
That's where the propane in the tank is heated up to the point where it self-ignites.
Yeah.
And the tank explodes and it looks like a fuel air bomb like you would see in the Vietnam War
Yes.
videos. Looks exactly like that, and it sucks because now you've got 4 or 5 houses on fire, an entire field on fire, and who knows how many firefighters were in the middle of that when it happened and they didn't have their mask on because they weren't inside. It can create a whole other list of problems. So if you do have propane, make sure when the firefighters get there, even though they may be the ones down the street, tell them, I have a propane tank. It's, a 500-gallon tank, and it's in the back. Because the first thing they're going to do is take a line back there and start putting water on it to make sure it doesn't heat up.
Right.
That's the single most important thing, because if that explodes, now we're going to have a whole conflagration.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was Vern's question. He asked me to ask Bruce. Like, we know if we evacuate for her, of course, ours is strapped to a house. It's just a tank. We don't have that big Tylenol capsule like we have at other houses, right? Is say that we have that fire, we put our lid on, it's still happening. Should we, when we leave, because it's something we do for hurricanes, turn off that propane tank? Because it also comes up, to our deck and feeds our grill. And so that would not be a concern. Whatever's left in that line, just turn it off. Like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because typically what happens is the interior firefighters, when they get to a fire, they will immediately go in. There will be a team of 3 typically. We like to have 4, but typically it's 3. They will go in, and if they're told there's what's called entrapment, somebody that's in there, they will go in and try and get that person out immediately, because we cannot put water on a fire until we know people that are not in bunker gear are out of the house. Because if I put water on a fire inside of a house and there's somebody in there that's still alive, I'm going to cook them like a lobster, because the first thing that happens when I put that water on is steam goes everywhere, and the steam's at about 500 to 600 degrees. It's going to bake them like a lobster, and you're going to find a dark red body laying somewhere. Like, why didn't they tell us somebody was in the back room? That's important. If you get out and somebody didn't get out, you got to tell the firefighters that get there that. They have to know that, because if they go in spraying water immediately, whether that person's alive or not, if they had a little safe area, they're going to be dead within seconds of you hitting that fire with water, because the steam is going to spread everywhere throughout the house.
Yeah.
I had no idea that. I just thought they didn't want to blow somebody off their feet. Okay, that is frightening. And that's a lot of control on y'all's part too. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and think about what a firefighter's wearing. We have about roughly, bunker gear is approximately 8 inches thick. That's why when you see a firefighter, a lot of times guys are like, wow, those are really big guys. Yeah, because they're wearing an extra 8 inches of insulation on them, plus a fireproof layer, plus a waterproof layer.
So heavy. How heavy are those? Just average?
They can typically, they vary just a little, but typically your typical full bunker gear, the jacket, the helmet, and the pants with the boots all together is about an additional 50 to 75 pounds. It just depends on the equipment your department gets.
And then then you're carrying the hose in, you're lugging it around. If you have to carry anybody out to safety, you're dealing with that additional
Plus,
weight.
you have a tank on your back that weighs about another 20 or 30 pounds that has your oxygen so that you can go into the fire and not burn your lungs.
Yeah.
On top of throwing someone over your shoulder who may be anywhere from 150 to 350 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, you're expected to handle that on your own if you're a firefighter. Doesn't matter if you're 5 foot tall or you're 6'10". Doesn't matter. You have to be able to handle that on your own so that the other two firefighters on that line can control the water line, because when you have an 1.5-inch hose or 1.75-inch hose that's getting water pumped through it at close to 130 psi, depending on levels and stuff, we have to adjust it a little. But if you just turn that on and you don't realize there's a wall right in front of you and you turn that on full, it can take somebody my size and throw you backwards through the air with just the water pressure, because it's like opening up a jet engine directly at a wall. What's going to happen? You're going to...
Wow.
Yeah.
So that... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so we'll go back to the different types of fire, but first, what are some tips you've taught at schools and at churches and things? What are some tips for... I'm on live, Chelsea. Go. Sorry,
you normally have husband interrupt us. We have Chelsea interrupt.
Okay, so what are some tips and tricks? First of all, a family plan, right? If there is a fire, like everybody should be on the same page. If there's a fire, we're going to try with the fire extinguisher. If it gets out of control, we're going out of the house. I've always been told have an alternate safe space to go to. Like for us, it's my brother-in-law's. It's just across the highway here. Chelsea knows to look both ways. Get out, call 911, look both ways, go straight over there. Any other tips? Like I know for a lot of children, they tend to get scared and they want to go hide, or somebody maybe with mental disabilities, they get scared, they want to go hide. So it's really important to practice with them.
Right. And the other thing is, everything you said there was absolutely correct. You need to have an alternate site to meet so that mom's there. She knows I have 3 kids and I only got 2 here. Where's the other one? Right. And then when the fire department gets there, that person needs to tell the fire department, I'm missing a kid. I don't know where they are, because that'll be the first priority. We don't care if the damn building burns down as long as we get the kid out of there.
Family first.
We don't give a care. We worry about life first. So if there's a life in there that's alive, then you tell the firefighters, because the first thing they're going to do is try and go and do a room by room search immediately before they do anything to get that person out of the fire.
Right.
So it's absolutely right. And having a place where everybody knows if there's a fire, you get out of the house however you can get out of the house. It doesn't matter. Get out of there. Right. And then meet here so that mom knows, okay, everybody's out, or dad knows everybody's out. Right. So in that, then you have an accountability to the fire department. You say, hey, everybody's out. We know, okay, we can go right in and start hitting this thing because everybody is out of the house.
Right.
Some people will extend that to their pets too. But I mean, if they tell us there's pets in there, I'm probably, as the nozzle man, I'm going to say, you know what? I really don't want to kill a dog, but if I have to kill a dog in order to save this house and save these people from having to go through $300,000 of repairs versus $70,000 of repairs, I'm going to hit the fire. So that's just something that everybody needs to understand. It's not because we hate animals. It's that we're trying to save the structure for the person so that they're not having to completely rebuild a house. Right. But like I said, if there's life at risk, we don't care about the house. We don't care about the furnishings. We don't care about anything. We're going to get the life out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want a firefighter dying trying to save my belongings, Right.
Yep.
Either.
So that was absolutely correct. And all of that was good. The other thing is you brought up, like if you have somebody who has cognitive disabilities or smaller children, a good thing to do, especially if you have a volunteer fire department in your area, they will absolutely take their time. They will sit down with your kids. They will bring all of their gear out so that they can see them in their entire fire gear, so that they don't, because a 5 or 6 year old kid,
they don't think an alien's coming in the door.
Because I've got a helmet on that makes me up to 6'5".
And then
I've got a face
so
mask on. Got a face mask on that they can't see into. And then with your breathing, it sounds like.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is
freaks
really
kids
important.
out. Yeah, that would freak. that would probably freak just about anybody out if you're laying there in your bed and you don't realize there's a fire, and all of a sudden your door gets kicked in and you hear that and you just see this big, large, looming thing in front of you. You'd be like, "What the hell is that?" And you go into bed. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
So
that is
that's
true.
another good thing.
That is a great point. Because, I mean, for somebody with mental issues or, or whatever, that would look really scary. If you're not used to seeing something like that. Like for a lot of us, we see shows on TV. My husband's a volunteer firefighter. But that is something that's really important. And we need to make sure our kids, and just practicing, like, okay, you could have some stickers, or a sheet of paper that you tape up on different parts of the wall, and be like, have it on the wall, and then wake them up and say, "There's a fire in the house."
Yes.
I see the fires right here in the living room, which is going to be the best exit to go out of. And going over things like if the fire is right there at your bedroom door and it's really high and you can't get out. It's okay to bust your window out, throw a blanket over it, and get out the window if you need to. Things like that a lot of, because kids are told not to break something, so they're scared of stuff like that. They're scared they're going to get in trouble if they do that. They need to know it's okay if there's a fire like that. It's okay to do damage to get out. And the other thing is how to do that safely.
If, let's say, the bedrooms in your house are all on the second floor. Another very important thing to have, even for the adults in their room, is to have one of those ladders that you can buy. And if you don't know where to buy them in your area, go to your local fire department and tell them, "Hey, I've got a 2-story house. All of my bedrooms are on the second floor. Where do I get escape ladders from?" And the firefighters will be able to tell you exactly where to go. And they may even have a deal set up. We would do that a lot of times, our fire safety prevention stuff. They would give them a discount if we gave them one of our cards from our fire department. They could go there and they could get 15-20% off of a ladder. And if they bought multiple ones, they'd apply it to each one. So that's very important as a preventative measure, and make sure the children know how to use it. Because usually they come with a hammer right next to them, a big, heavy iron hammer that they can put right through the window so that they don't have to try and open the window. They can just go right through the window, and then they pick up the ladder and they just throw it out the window and tell them, as soon as you hear it hits the ground, get down that thing. We don't care. Just make sure all the glass is out from the window so that you don't cut yourself going out the window. And that's why they give you that iron hammer, because you can just go scrape all the way around the window with that iron hammer, all the glass is out of the way, and get out of that room.
That's my pet peeve, is windows that don't open, because I'm in a raised house and we have that escape ladder. And we've practiced using it. Of course, our house is newer, so our windows do open. But how about people are in an older house where it's rickety, or to open it, you have to stick a broomstick in it to hold it up. And it's like, if you have that kind of situation, my personal opinion is, make one room with a damn window that works. I don't care if it looks different than your older windows, and everybody knows that's where they've got to go. I have a front door and a back door. But the only way I'm getting out of my bedroom, if there's a fire in the middle, or someone sets my porch on fire, or a fire under my house in a raised house, is through that window. So we have one in our guest room under the bed. Guests are on their own. You're grown. And old people go here, "Oh, they're too heavy." They're not. They're set to pull right out of that thing. And it's manageable. If I had one arm, I could do it. And I'm old and don't have big strength. But that is the best advice. And children would be excited to do that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And with today's technology, it may be more expensive, I give you that, but they actually have fire ladders that will self-deploy.
Oh.
You don't have to break a window or anything. They may be $300 or $400, so that may be out of budget. But if you know, okay, the child that's in this room absolutely is not going to be able to deal with breaking a window, clearing the glass, and getting the ladder out of the window. They're just not mentally going to be able to handle it.
Right.
You put that in there and you tell them, if there's a fire, there's a little button by the window. You hit this button and the ladder will swing up, it will break through the window and actually auto-deploy outside.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Now, they're not cheap. I'm not saying they're cheap. But if you have somebody who falls into that category in your house, wouldn't it be worth even $800 or $900 to know, okay, if there's a fire, I don't have to try and
Amen.
run through the fire to get to
Oh.
this person to help them. I can get out of the house because I know they know what to do. They're going to hit the button. It's going to break through their window so they don't have to
Right.
worry about it. And their ladder is going to be self-deployed so that they can get out of the house. Again, it's not cheap, but I'd pay it.
CR brings up a great point. One thing he remembers is to fill the doorknobs with the back of your hand so you don't burn your palm. It still holds true today, correct?
Correct. And the other thing is, if you want to know how firefighters do it, we don't grab with a hand or the back of our hand. What we do is we will actually take the sleeve of our bunker gear. We will lift it up so that the back of our wrist can feel the heat against the door.
Oh.
And if you feel any heat at all on your wrist, we know there's an active fire behind there. You put it back down and you get ready to enter with the hose because you know there's fire back there.
Okay.
Wow.
Great
And that's
tip.
the way we do it as firefighters, because we've got 8 inches of insulation on us. We're not going to be able to tell. If we just put our arm against a door, we're not going
Right.
to feel anything at all. We have to physically expose
Well,
some
right,
of our
because
skin.
you're so covered.
Yep.
But for us in the house, we can kind of feel with the back of our hand, we can
Yep.
or wrist, we can fill the door like that,
Yep.
just real quickly. And if it doesn't feel hot right off the bat, kind of then use your hand and kind of feel around. So what are some other tips and tricks as far as kids, like to help get them used to, and like I know the stop, drop, and roll and things like that, but any other suggestions or things like that, especially
You
for
can
children?
actually make it fun for them, because a lot of times what we had to practice when we were in the fire academy, we had to practice doing what's called the duck walk, because for us to get into a fire, a lot of times we have to duck waddle into it. We have to sit down with our butt on our heels basically and duck waddle under the smoke in there, because if you're up in that smoke, at the very top of that smoke, it's 3,000 degrees. It'll melt our fire helmets right down over us.
Jeez.
Wow.
So you can't just walk straight up into a fire. A lot of times we'll see black smoke rolling out the front door. Okay, we know what we got to do. We got to squat all the way down, and we're dragging a hose at the same time and duck waddle through this house that we've never
Wow.
been in before and find where the fire is. And then you start fighting basically from your knees.
Let me ask you, would it be helpful to have like your floor plan already pre-printed and laminated and somewhere on the outside of your home where you could hand it to firefighters that come on
If you
scene?
want to do that, that would be something that the fire chief would be like, oh my God, you're a savior. Because then the fire chief knows, okay, this is a bedroom, this is a bedroom, this is a kitchen, this is a bathroom. We have 2 bedrooms on the second level. So he can break up his rescue crews if you say somebody's missing, and he knows exactly where to direct them inside.
Like this
okay,
is
go
this-
in where the
yeah.
line is and go to the right. There's a room there. And
Yeah.
go from there. So that would be a very good thing. Most people don't do that, but if you have a disabled person in your home, I do not know of one fire department, career or volunteer, if you tell them you have a disabled person that's either cognitively or physically disabled in your home, they will come out before there's a fire or anything. They will bring their entire fire crews out there so that they know this is how I get in, this is where I have to go specifically to find the disabled person's room. And that's the first thing they will do before they do anything else. They will go, they will check that room, they will make sure that the disabled person is out of there. And then, if you tell them there's another person that's in there, they'll go after that. But they will go to the disabled person first. And they also have, well, we still had them, but I don't know if they still make them. They have little window stickers that are about that big. And what those are meant to do is you stick them on the window on the inside, and they're reflective, because the first thing we do as firefighters when we get to a place that's on fire is we will go by and we have our flashlights and we're putting our lights on every single window to see if there's one of those reflective stickers, because that tells firefighters there's either children or disabled people in that room that you need to access immediately, because they may not understand or be able to get out of this fire. So we would immediately send rescue crews with ladders, whatever we need, to that room that had the sticker on it. So that's... And most of the volunteer fire departments I know, they would have stacks and stacks of these. Nobody'd ever come by and ask for them.
That's
We'd give them out
unreal.
like we'd have like a community day or something, and you'd go out and we'd have, a stack of like 3,000 of them, come back with none because everybody's like, oh, we didn't even know you guys had these. And we're like, what are you talking about? We tell you guys all the time, come by.
That is amazing that they have those and that they
Yeah.
look for them. Because
Yeah.
think about
And
it,
a lot of
especially
them.
now if you have an elderly
Yep.
parent living with you, right? And basically in a hospital bed or a help stand up recliner. That's amazing. Because you
And
couldn't get them out. I'm older, be able to assist them out. Wow, that's great to know.
as a civilian, I bet even if you contacted, because a lot of them come from first alert fire alarms, if you contacted the company and asked them, say, hey, I have a disabled person, I have an older parent that's living with me, or I have young children, just ask them, say, hey, I know the fire departments have these. I wasn't able to find any at the fire department. Would you guys mind sending me 2 or 3 of these stickers? And I almost guarantee you, just for good name and recognition, they would send you 3 or 4 of them, because they've got boxes and boxes and boxes of them that they hand out to the fire departments all around the country.
That's awesome. And you could also check if your fire department doesn't have them, you could also like step in for them and say, hey, our local fire department doesn't have these. Would you be willing to donate some to them so that they can help out our community?
Absolutely, because a civilian coming in and asking them for their department will probably get a lot faster response than the department just sending something off that goes into an email box and they check maybe once a month.
Yeah.
But you as a customer calling them and they say, oh, their local fire department doesn't have these. And they just look up where the local fire department is. They send them 10,000 of them in a box.
Yeah.
And they don't have to pay for them or anything. They just show up and they say, hey, one of your people in your community let us know you don't have any of these anymore. If you need to reorder them, here's our special number to call to reorder them. But here's 10,000 of them so that you can cover your community.
Awesome.
Man.
And advocate for your local fire departments, especially the volunteer ones, because there's a lot of stuff that they don't have access to as far as funding and things like that other fire departments do. And also, as far as our fire detectors and things like smoke detectors and things like that, a lot of fire departments check with them also, because they will give out free ones, especially during spring and fall, whenever it's
when it's Fire Safety Month or Fire Safety Week, however they do it in your state. Some of them will do it at a slightly different time, but typically in October, they'll start doing like some fire safety stuff. And like at our fire department, we were volunteer. We would get a box with like 400 of the smoke carbon monoxide fire detectors. And they would say, give these out to the people in your community. And we would have to put something on Facebook, or we'd have to go to like one of the borough meetings and say, hey, we have carbon monoxide and fire detectors. We will come, put them in, put the battery in for it, and place it in your house for you. You don't have to do anything. Just call us, let us know. We'll be there. We will do it for you.
That's
amazing.
Awesome. And along with that, of course, carbon monoxide detectors are great to have. A lot of them may offer that as well, or maybe a discount on them or something like that as well. So you might check with them, or at least check with them on what a good quality one is that's a reasonable price for your family.
The other thing to think of with the CO detectors, do not put them on the ceiling.
Right.
Where does CO live? CO lives close to the ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're putting that in your bedroom, for instance, you should have the CO detector about where you have your nightstand by your bed. That is the ideal place to place it, on the wall next to your bed, so that if it goes off, it's going to blow your ears out, number one. And number two, the first thing you're going to do is sit up. So you're going to come out of the carbon monoxide.
Right.
You're going to sit up rather than, if you have it on the ceiling, it gets all the way down to where your bed is maybe before the actual alarm goes off, because it has to be at a certain concentration.
Right.
You get up out of the bed, now you're standing in the middle of carbon monoxide that's falling down toward the floor, which it normally does.
Right.
And you're trying to fight your way through CO to get out, which actually bonds to your blood 10 times better than oxygen does.
Yeah.
And you end up falling down the hallway, and now nobody else can get out either.
Yeah. Yeah. So if some of the signs of that, just real quick, since we're kind of on that subject, some of the signs are extreme tiredness. What are some other signs of carbon monoxide poisoning?
The key things when we would get called to houses all the time, because there's a lot of natural gas heaters in Pennsylvania, because it's just cheaper and easier because of the natural gas that's available in that state.
Right.
So there's tons and tons of those, and there's also a lot of fireplaces in houses.
Right.
People forget to open the fluke.
Oh,
If
Yeah.
you don't open the flute, guess what? All the smoke, all the carbon monoxide boils back down and comes out and goes into the house.
Oh,
So we would get calls probably from November through February, March timeframe. We would probably respond to anywhere from 5 to 10 carbon monoxide calls because all of a sudden their carbon monoxide would go off, detector would go off, and they don't know why. And they'd always hate they'd have to go outside their house. But the ones that didn't go outside their house, usually when we get there in the rescue truck, we're calling for 4 or 5 ambulances because we'd walk in the house and they're already passed out on the floor. And
Yeah.
a key indicator for somebody who was not in the house, because you may not recognize it if you're in the house, but when you walk in, if you see somebody whose skin is red or bright red, that's carbon monoxide poisoning. Immediately get that person out of the house into fresh air. And if you have like a rescue truck there, immediately get them onto 100% oxygen, 15 liters. Just boom, do it. Don't even ask any questions, do it. Because the longer that person is in that environment, the more difficult it is when they get to the emergency room for the doctors to unbind that carbon monoxide from their blood cells.
Real quick, Kaylin made a point here. Her mom's profoundly deaf, so if she doesn't have her hearing aids in, she may not hear the alarms in her apartment. They do have smoke alarms that have the flashing lights, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So that would be a great option for her to have. And I would have one right directly in the bedroom where it's flashing right towards her face, and then have other ones throughout the house. But definitely one where it would just flash directly at her face to wake her up.
Correctly. And those ones that typically have that flasher on them, they use them primarily in like rest homes and outpatient hospitals or, transition hospitals where a lot of older people tend to be. So those typically have 120 decibel speaker on them that when you hear those go off, trust me, I was in all my fire gear going into a rest home because they had a carbon monoxide alarm go off. Those things will deafen you. Trust me. So even if you have very hard of hearing people, they absolutely, I guarantee you, are going to hear that unless they are 100% deaf. They're going to feel.
rattle.
I could feel it on my chest every time that air horn went off, and that's basically what it was like an air horn. I could feel it through all of my gear hitting my chest. The sound wave.
Wow.
And that's through all of that gear.
That's significant if it's through all that gear. Yeah.
So somebody laying in their bed, they hear that go off, and they would at least feel it on their chest, which sometimes you have completely deaf people. That's what they put in their room so that they know there's a fire. Because they will feel that on their chest, and that'll freak them out. They'll be like, what the hell is that? I shouldn't be feeling that when I'm sleeping. What's going on? And they'll wake up, they'll look, and they'll see that the fire alarm's going off at that point because there's a flashing strobe light in their face. They'll go, oh, there's a fire. Boom, they get up now.
Couple more things I wanted to cover. First of all, I saw you speaking about this on another chat. I can't remember if it was Courtney's or Gil's or SOP's, but talking about the fire blankets. A lot of people think, that they can just hunker down where they're at, cover themselves with a fire blanket, and they're going to be good. And that's not how it is. How are they properly used?
Okay, number one, a lot of them think that because they see forestry firefighters use what's called a fire blanket. So if they see something that says fire blanket, they think back to these movies where they see forestry firefighters that are outside in the environment and they've got a fire that's coming too fast. They can't get away from it. So what they'll do is they'll dig a little thing in the ground, just a little hole that's not huge, just a little one, and they will put that fire blanket. What it is it's reflective, so it reflects the heat away from them. But inside of that, it still gets to about 180, 190 degrees.
And
so
that's
that
a
would
last
cook you.
ditch effort for them as well. That's just if they're absolutely trapped and they have no way to get out.
And the fire blankets that you see that are not for wildland firefighters, all that those are meant to do is to wrap around your body, put over your head so that if you're in a place where the only way you can get out is to run through a hallway that has some flames that are coming out of a room and shooting into the hallway or something. You put that over you, your child, hunker together and keep it closed and then run as fast as you can by that area where the flame is. Because that blanket is not going to protect you from everything 100% so you could stand there in the fire and nothing's going to happen. But it will protect you from a contact burn because you just ran by and a fire, piece of flame bumps out on you. Or you have to get by an area where there's fire on the floor. That those are not meant to be, your bunker in place and I put this around me and I'm invincible now. That
Right.
doesn't happen.
Right.
Like people getting in pools and wildfires in California. It's like, holy crap. And Suburban Hillbilly has a really good question because so many people are on oxygen now. I think it's a very good question.
My mother's on oxygen. The oxygen company makes large deliveries to her house because she's so far out in the country. Any suggestions for extra precautions?
I can tell you personally because this has happened to me in a fire.
Ooh.
Empties, keep outside away from the building. Because if you do have a fire, and for instance, what happened to me, and this was second, third fire I was ever in. Thankfully, I had a 10-year experienced firefighter in front of me, and I had the captain of our fire station behind me. And they just started getting a weird feeling, and I kind of heard something, but I wasn't sure what it was. They freaked out, and they backed us out of there right away. And as we got out of the door, there was a closet right next to the door, right where I was standing, and the captain was standing right behind me. And it was probably about 8 feet tall, and it was completely stacked with these old oxygen bottles that the person that lived there had put in there. And there was like, I don't know, probably a better part of 100 of them.
Oh, wow.
And they all had, 2 liters, 10 liters, 8 liters of oxygen in them because she couldn't use them anymore.
Yeah.
So she just put them in the thing waiting for them to get picked up again. And when we got outside of the house and we were just going over this hedge, all of a sudden behind us, all these things start popping off. They go, pop, pyong, pop, pyong. And then you'd see as they went across the doorway we had just walked out of, there's a blue-green flame coming out of the back of this thing. I'm looking at them like, what the hell was that? And they said, oh, they obviously have oxygen bottles. So don't store them inside, especially don't store them inside near an access door where firefighters and rescuers are going to be coming in to help you. Store them, if you have to store them inside, store them inside the garage or something. Chain them up against the wall. Get a small box like you would put firewood in and chain them into that outside of the garage, but do not have them in the house. Only have full bottles that you're actually using in the house. That way, if that person's being moved, they should be moving that oxygen bottle with them, because walking into a house and having oxygen, which is an oxidizer, having that as a surprise for you when you get in there is not fun at all. Trust me.
Yeah, I bet not. I bet not.
Yeah.
Praise God that y'all didn't get hurt, but
Kill you.
you backed out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We were all face down on the snow because there was actually snow. It happened in January. And we were all face down in the snow, and we all looked at each other. I was like, what the hell was that? They said, oh, nothing. Don't worry about it. I was like, yeah, right, Cap.
Well, we could just keep going on about this topic, but we're at our hour mark. I thank you so much for coming in, Bruce. Hey, Will, good to see you. Any quick questions before we get off of here? Real quick before we go. I want to thank you for coming on and giving us some tips and tricks. And there was some great information. I definitely learned several things in here. I would encourage each of you to share this out so that people can go back and rewatch it. I'd suggest you rewatch it because there were some great tips in there. And if you were in and out or you missed anything, you might have missed something that could save your life or a loved one's life. So, all right. I'm not seeing any questions. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, you guys. I appreciate you. I love you. God bless. I won't be at anyone's live streams for the next few days because I'm going to be in, out camping, living some life. So I will see y'all back. I get back Sunday, so it'll be either Sunday night or Monday before I see anybody on here. So I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching. If you
Have fun, Tasha.
If you have any questions, you can email me. Or I don't know if Bruce is.
I've got my email on my About section too.
Okay, all right.
We
so
should have talked about fire pit safety. Said she's going camping.
I can come back and do that.
Okay.
I can tell her offline though when we're not worried about tripping on somebody else's time, but I can tell her about that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, court's going live in just a little bit. I'm going to get off of here and start loading stuff up. I will try to be over there listening in while I'm going through my checklist one last time. I love y'all. Thank you for watching. God bless. And guys, remember to prep for it all. And thank you, Mouse, for being my co-host again today. Love you.
You too.
Bye, guys.